On today's episode of PTS&Me, we talked to Talison Bunker, a young lady that grew up with PTS of her own, as well as a father who suffered from PTS. She's currently going to school to get her medical degree, and then she's going to join the Army as a 68 X-ray mental health specialist. Thank you for listening. Okay, so welcome to another episode. Today I have Talison Bunker here with me. She is a med student, understanding or in the realm of psychology. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Bachelor of Arts psychology, and then going to master's to doctorate.
Very nice. And she has gratefully come on today to share her experiences as a child who grew up in a military family whose father has PTSD, and just some of those experiences and what kind of shaped her into the person she is today and what her goals and aspirations are moving forward. So Talison, I'm just going to, if we can go back to, what it was like growing up in a household that was like that.
Yeah. So as a child, I know that when I came here in 2004, because I was raised in Italy, I was born there, my dad was stationed there. I know when we came back in 2004 to North Carolina, Harnett County, so my dad had deployed a lot during the time that I was young, but I still remember them, like Christmases, times that I was upset that he wasn't home. But when he came back, I noticed it was different. Like there was every single time it was like chipped away of who he was. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of frustration. There was a lot of violence. My dad tends to still think that he doesn't have PTSD, but as a kid, there was a lot of things that like really upset him. And he never wanted to show his kids what he was going through, like especially just not wanting to deal with the emotions or deem himself like a bad dad for showing emotion. Because like as a kid, it was, especially for men, it was like, do not cry. You're not okay to not be okay.
Right.
It was kind of just like, I noticed it as a kid. And I'm not bashing my dad, but he had a lot of anger issues and he drank a lot. And at that time of my life, I had a traumatic event happen to me. And I think it was something that affected the relationship with my dad and my mom in my future life. But at that time, my dad was angry and he would have parties and he would get drunk. It's something he really couldn't deal with. And it was just something that over time I learned was PTSD. But at the time it was anger, like, okay, this is what a parent's supposed to look like the authoritarian figure rather than a parent. Over time I learned that was equipped to anger, which is a part of PTSD and TBI is quick to aggression, lack of empathy. Mm-hmm. That's kind of a big sign.
What did your dad do in the military?
My dad was a combat engineer.
Okay.
He did it for 20 years. He retired as an E6, which is a staff sergeant. He ended his career at headquarters in Fort Bragg for, I think, 5 or 6 years of his career. He ended there.
Okay.
He had his own little squad or whatever who worked with him at the headquarters.
Did he ever share with you any of his experience or anything that?
I think the biggest things for him is he didn't ever want to share stuff until I got enough older to be studying what I'm studying. I know what he's seen because I've seen the videos and the pictures and all of the things that happened over there and what they saw over there, because I chose to put myself in an objective standpoint and study that and see what they saw and what that does to the human brain. I actually did a paper in my psychology class for developmental psychology, because you have 9 stages of development. You're from infant all the way to elder. And I did a paper on the effects of PTSD and TBI. So.
Yeah, I did a little bit of research into that, and it's so complex, like how all the different parts of the brain work together. And then when you have trauma, how it affects one, and it's just, it's so, I mean, I can't even wrap my mind around it, but it's just so complex how it all ties together and creates the issues that we face when we have it.
Yeah. And that part of the brain is the cerebral cortex. It's one of the most common parts in brain impacted by TBI. This is from one of my sources. It's the outermost part of the brain. It's the cerebral cortex. That's kind of the area where that is affected. I actually provided you a picture of a brain.
Yep.
And all that. So it kind of is essential for your more advanced functions, your thought processing, your reasonings, your language, your emotions, behaviors, movements, and sensations. A lot of times when that's damaged, you have lack of empathy, that's lack of reasoning, or that's logic, and lack of emotion. So you're quick to aggression because you're not cognitive of what you're doing. You're lacking that process or more advanced function in that part of the brain because of the damage.
Yeah, one of the things that really made sense to me when I was going through some of the sources that you sent to me and then some of my own research is how the brain, it's like for me, it's like a lot of anxiety and not, something triggers and it's like, I don't understand why I'm getting so worked up, but it's how I can see that, what's in front of me that's triggering me. It's not a threat. I know that, but my body and my brain doesn't know that. So it's like, It's causing me to respond like this. And I know from my side of it, and I'm sure you could expand on like as a not only with someone with PTSD, but as a child of, being in that environment. Like my wife said to me earlier today, she's like, I don't know why this bothers you so much. And it was just my kids yelling and screaming and crying. And I don't know either, but it did for some reason.
A lot of times, especially after TBI, loud noises, it really depends on like what your brain will change. So you have really bad anxiety with your PTSD. My dad had a lot of anger. He was mostly anger and very hypersexual. That was kind of where everybody's different when it comes to PTSD. For me, I have really bad anxiety and I have really bad OCD. And for the past 4 years that I've been in therapy, I've found ways to not get my trigger set. I found ways to breathe. And actually on the last episode with Bradford, he was talking about the 5 senses, which is a grounding technique commonly used by a lot of therapists for treatment. You're grounding yourself in that situation because your brain's going to a whole different part. I also wanted to touch on how a person can see someone in PTSD. It might look different in everybody, but someone who doesn't know and then tries to grab somebody like he was talking, it freaks him out. And I wanted to try and talk about how a person can see someone having a PTSD attack or a panic attack. So that's a big thing as well.
So what are some things that you have learned in your studies as far as how can someone recognize that doesn't have PTSD?
So the biggest thing is dissociation. Dissociation is where your brain shuts off. You don't remember what you're thinking, but you stare into the abyss. That's the most common way to say it, but it's called dissociative disorder. It's where traumatic experiences happen to you and you shut them off in your brain, you will zone out. If you talk about it, if you talk about one of your times in Iraq, or if you notice you talk about something that traumatic that happened to you in your life, you're going to automatically pause and you're just going to dissociate because your brain is overcompensating for all that emotion and that reasoning. And the sensory overload, there's so much sensations when it comes to panic attacks. You feel everything, but you feel nothing. Is the best way I can explain it.
Yeah.
And for me, I've learned that seeing someone there's also obviously other mental disorders like autism and other various things, but panic attacks are different with someone with PTSD because anything can set them off. You with crowds and malls and listening to what you were talking about. A lot of times you can tell by their eyes that dilate. You can see that they're not physically there. Body language is a big thing. If they're tight and tense, and that they're just like extremely tense and they're closed, that's also a big sign. I'm not really sure about like other ways to see, because I'm a different type of PTSD. Well, there's different various types of PTSD. Like
Right.
there's veterans, and then there's sexual assault survivors. Everybody has different PTSD attacks.
Right.
So
I was reading one of the things that you sent me, and it talks about, and I think this goes in line with what you're talking about now, is how it's different for everybody, and then not always being able to see it, is that society looks at veterans. Let me just pull it up here. But it's basically like they don't understand what's going on. And so it's the stigma of it. So
yeah,
this is
I think from a sociological perspective, I think that is what it was.
Yeah. So, so this is from The Hill that you sent me, thehill.com, talking about veterans face a national lack of empathy. And it says, while the crisis is not without historical precedent, current factors in the composition and operations faced by our armed forces make the transition back to civilian life all the more difficult. PTSD and TBI run rampant. And although medical research has leapt forward since previous major combat ops, proper diagnosis and treatment leaves much to be desired. The solution lies as much with society as it does with the individual and his or her own medical team. And that made sense to me when I was reading it, because it's like, I get it, my therapist gets it, my immediate family gets it, but then when I go to work or just being out around other civilians, like, it's like you have to explain yourself that it's like, no, like I'm listening to what you're saying, but my brain's just a little messed up, so I'm scattered brain. That's why we started talking about one story, and 5 minutes later I'm rambling on about something completely else. Or, you're just the jerk that shows up at somebody's party and it's overwhelming for you, so you're like, all right, I'm leaving. And they're just like, wow, Brandon was kind of rude. But it's not that at all. But, you don't walk around with like a big sign that says, hey, I have PTS and TBI, and here's all the symptoms that I may show to you. I apologize in advance.
Yeah. And I think that treatments for a lot of times for people who do have scatterbrain, especially with like PTSD and anxiety, it's called compassion meditation. And Bradford had gone through that. Mm-hmm. It's where you are in tide with all your emotions. And that's really hard, especially for somebody who was told emotions aren't okay. And that's a big mental health crisis in the Army, was you weren't allowed to not be okay. Right. Like you weren't allowed to be sad. You weren't allowed to be upset. You're supposed to push it away and focus on the mission. Yep. But your mission is your health and your physical being. That was also your mission as well, because you can't be the mission if you're not fully there.
Right. And I think that goes back to a lot of like leadership and unit cohesion and recognizing when somebody on a team has an issue that needs to be taken care of. And it's like, I could think back to a handful of experiences in my life where it's, they say soldier first, mission always, but it's like the mission has to get done. And if you're not capable of doing the mission, then I'm going to replace you with somebody that can do the mission.
Yeah. So. And that was a big thing for a lot of veterans or a lot of soldiers, was the fear of being knocked out, fear of being not pushed into the mission, because it was like, I got to be doing something. And what Bradford said, I didn't feel like I did enough. Right. That was kind of like, you're trying to put yourself, you're trying to work up, be better, because that's what you're pushed the whole time. Be better, even though you were still doing great, but in a way that wasn't healthy for a lot of people who needed different ways to be better.
Well, yeah, and you don't want to look as though you're weak or incompetent, but everything in the military is like a competition, at least in the combat arms world. I can speak to that, where if you're doing PT, it's who's the strongest, who's the fastest. When you're doing range work, who shot the best. If, anything and everything that you do is like, who comes out on top. So you're constantly competing, and then when you become a failure, even though you're not a failure by any standards, but when you're coming in last and you can't compete and you're mentally down, you're physically down, you start to get looked upon as you're weak and you don't belong here and you shouldn't be here. Oftentimes, I won't say that for every organization and unit, but I think that's a lot of the same mindset.
Yeah.
So you are studying for behavioral health.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. How I can see how you got into it, but what made you decide to really want to go for it?
It's actually a really big moment for me. And I know that a lot of times I may cry because it's still kind of just like, oh my gosh. But when I first got out of high school, I was trying to join the Navy.
Okay.
And it was just like a whole process, and it never worked out. And I like brought myself down. And at that point in my life, it was like, okay, let me just do my job. Because at the time I worked at Taco Bell. So I continued it. Well, about a couple years in, after I was like, okay, I don't want to be working at fast food for the rest of my life, I tried joining the Army. Well, even though I got an 85 on my ASVAB, I had to retake it because it was a PI-CAT, not an ASVAB. So I was like, okay. So I retook it, and I had test anxiety, kept having test anxiety. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to pull on a door that's not going to open. But I was upset because I at that time, I wanted to fill my dad's shoes. I wanted to make him proud because he didn't have a son. He had me and my sister. And it was like, I wanted to be the person that he wanted and not who I needed to be. And that comes a lot of times from people who have PTSD from like childhood and stuff like that. They want to make their parent proud, even though that parent hurt them or that they don't have that emotional connection. As I got older, obviously it became stronger. But I finally was able to technically get in, but I have the decision to either OCS through Chapel Hill and B689X, which is a behavioral mental specialist or mental health specialist in the military, or I could just jump in now. But I think I'm going to go to the OCS route because I want to help those in need. When I was going to therapy, my therapist asked me about a year into therapy with her, how about you just do psychology? And I was like, excuse my language, fuck no, my brain's too fucked up for that shit. And I thought about it for 4 years. I was like, you know what? I want to go to college. I want to make a difference. And I think what I went through as a kid for my dad who has PTSD and seeing what others have gone through and seeing that I want to be the difference in mental health in the Army, I want to be the difference. I wanted to not only have my own practice one day, but do retreats and stuff like that for people who have PTSD. Because a lot of times if you root yourself in activities, like I'm part of jiu-jitsu, which is a martial arts kind of thing in Asheboro, both the professors are ex-military. And a lot of the people in that class are ex-military or currently serving. And it's helped them have like leadership and team, and it's just given that ability to be able to have a team and feel belong to something rather than just going around and feeling like nothing. I do competitive shooting. There's a range down here called Coleman's Creek, and I know a lot of times gunfire is extremely triggering for certain individuals because it's different for everybody.
Right.
I grew up around guns, but I am dating a gunsmith, so it's a lot easier to be able to go out on the range. I've been all of the states for like conventions and stuff, but I wanted to be able to bring my knowledge and my personal experience with PTSD through my family and through myself and help veterans and soldiers, like not just veterans, but soldiers too, because there are people still serving that have these mental problems. Like I know people are alcoholics and substance abuse is a big thing. So it was something that I wanted to make my dad proud. And I figured, hey, this is what I'm meant to do, and nothing has stopped me yet. So I've been continuing my education into psychology for PTSD, which is abnormal psychology, which is the type of psychology I'll be doing.
Okay. You were talking about the jujitsu aspect of it.
Yes.
Have you figured out or have you learned anything about like brain wise where when guys or gals have PTSD and then they get into something that's like that, where it's not just fighting and rolling around on the ground, but it's the mental aspect of like you're dedicating your life to something, you are training in something, it is focused on. I did very little jujitsu many years ago, but there's a method behind of it, not just break the wrist and walk away.
Mm-hmm.
But what is it about that, whether it's jujitsu or, CrossFit, anything where there's like that competitive nature, where it gets your breathing going, where it's, a struggle, you're fighting through something. Like, is there a science behind of
For
it?
me, yes. For me, what I've studied, and obviously from my experience, I did CrossFit for a little bit, and I noticed a lot of service members did CrossFit because it gave them something to relieve their stress on. Because what they went through was very stressful,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of times the brain needs that adrenaline and that serotonin to get going. And a lot of times, a lot of people go to the gym because it's a rush and you feel relieved afterwards. You can become addicted to anything. And a lot of times people get addicted to the gym and get buff and built, and then they make that their ego. But a lot of times it has helped a lot of, okay, I'm sorry, the cat decided to join. I knew she was going to do that. But like jujitsu, you're a family. In the situation that you are in this class, you're doing it for self-defense, competing for fun, whatever. I've noticed that it's helped people with PTSD to have a team,
Mm-hmm.
unionship, leadership, sportsmanship, because you have the opportunity to teach younger individuals. So I'm a white belt with 1 stripe, and we have all the way up to a black belt with 4 stripes, who's a professor. He's amazing. But our highest student is a blue belt with 1 stripe. And having all of those individuals in there, especially kids wanting to learn this, the veterans have a way to, and soldiers have a way to actually have a purpose. And in the brain, if you stimulate it and you get enough adrenaline and serotonin, because a lot of times, I don't know what that was. Thank you for choosing Zoom. A lot of times, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I'm just letting you go.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying not to ramble too much.
No, you're good.
I can go on a whole tangent. And in the brain, giving yourself that adrenaline and that serotonin can help relieve some of like the PTSD moments and kind of lessen your perspective on yourself and others. It can help build. And a lot of times, sometimes you make it all your ego. Like a lot of people like, oh, I'm a veteran, I make CrossFit and I'm buff. Like a lot of times it goes to their head. But if they do get help, are in the process of doing jiu-jitsu or the gym, they're selfless. They're not selfish.
I've been doing some reading and research in this whole thought behind PTG, which is post-traumatic growth. And it talks about the aspects of retraining your brain, or I guess not retraining, but taking those memories when you have so many negative ones of whatever experience that it is, but you overlay it with positive memories. And so like your body goes through a traumatic event where you have this spike in adrenaline and the fight or flight kicks in, and that's what your body knows and associates it with combat or trauma. But then if you're able to do something that is able to give you the same type of feeling, then your brain is saying it's putting positive memories over the negative ones. So now when
Yeah.
your body responds this way, it's like, well, this reminds me of like the time that I was doing this in CrossFit or jujitsu, and I was successful, and it brings happy memories instead of negative ones.
You said it better than I did.
Well, I just reframed what you were saying. So,
Yeah.
but
Replacing memories is a very common form of treatment, and I think it's also a good one as well. And a lot of times you need that support system, like family-oriented therapies. I did a paper on that in my first psychology class about family-oriented therapy, and a lot of times what Bradford was talking about was they're too scared to be honest on those documents. And a
yeah,
lot of times when it comes to research and better than PTSD, that is one of the results. Like the objective quantitative data is messed up because not a lot of people are honest on those papers. So the data is credible, but they also have to jot in there. There's not honesty all the time because of fear, whatever.
yeah, fear and shame. I think people don't want to like truly open up about their flaws and issues, and whether that's to a doctor or to a friend, it's like, that's why I think within the veteran community specifically, well, no, I would imagine with any trauma group, like you feel comfortable around other people that have been through what you've been through because you know that they fully understand what it is you're talking about and thinking about. Whereas I think there's a little bit of apprehension when you're talking to someone who has no clue, trying to explain to them like how messed up you are. And then almost like
Yeah.
they're judging you, even though they're probably not judging, but it's like you
But you
suddenly
have that
become
fear.
self-aware. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you feel like no one understands you. And from like looking into various therapists who treat PTSD, and I cannot remember her name for some reason, but she was talking to a soldier. It was like, excuse my language, the shit you guys go through, you don't think that anybody else goes through. You feel alone, but in the end, you still talk to those people, but you can only get so far with people who are just as messed up as you are.
Mm-hmm.
You have to get through it and to be honest, just learn and be a better person. So
Yeah. When you look back at your life growing up with your father and stuff, now by no means do I want to like talk about him or ill of him, without him here to defend himself. But what were some of the specific triggers that would set him off, like making him angry? And I'm asking out of like curiosity because so I am also that way, where it's like I will just snap at my kids for no reason. It's not their fault. They're kids being kids.
for me, when I was younger, it was me and my sister misbehaving. So I was a little bitch when I was a kid. And I was going through something at the time that my parents didn't see, and it's not their fault. And a lot of times my emotions as a child were very different from those of other children. But I was mean to my sister, and then we got in trouble, or I'd break something, or something would break, and then me and my sister would be like, no, we didn't break it. And my mom would like just not listen and then tell my dad, and my dad would come home, yell at us, hit me, whatever. Like it was a lot of times he wasn't home, but when my mom said something to him, like instant come yell at us. Or if he had a bad day, he would yell at my mom or yell at me or my sister. Like a lot of times it was a lot of anger. And I know that, not talking bad of Bradford because he's an awesome dude. I remember with his son, I'm not going to say his name because I don't think it's right for me to say someone else's name. And he would get frustrated sometimes because we would play basketball in the driveway and he had to head out for work, and he would get like a little stern with him, but it was fine. And at that point in my life, it was like, okay, noticing it now, that was a lot of anger and aggression because of a trigger or what was going through his mind on that day. But it was like a lot of anger and aggression. And then when my dad retired, I was opinionated, and I I didn't believe in being quiet. I wanted to share my emotions. I didn't want to be quiet. And I guess I wanted attention, especially for what happened at the time. And when we moved away, it wasn't happening anymore. And I was like, okay, I need you to hear me. I want you to hear me. But he was too angry and he drank so much. And a lot of times, if you try and talk back to him, and I love my dad, and he had a lot of anger issues, but he did hit my mom and he hit me. Like, there's a lot of anger in the household.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people don't address that, because he kept avoiding it and avoiding it and avoiding it, because he was scared. In reality, he was terrified. I've only ever seen my dad cry 4 times in my entire life. One, when my mom threatened to leave if he didn't get help. The second time, I think it was the same thing. It was kind of just fights between my mom and my dad, and my mom wanting to leave. And I think the last time was when he was drunk and he was profusely apologizing, and he was like, I'm a horrible person. Like, he was just, and when you're drunk, you're your true self at that point.
Yeah.
You don't have any barriers. You are vulnerable. And so it was kind of like, when I was a kid, the triggers as a kid was my mom going to tell my dad what we did, or my mom pressing my dad's buttons, or me saying, hey, I need you to hear me, or I didn't clean a dish right. That was a big thing. I didn't clean a dish right. I didn't clean the house right. I didn't fold the laundry the right way. Oh, I didn't do laundry. I didn't clean the house. Like, it was a lot of chores that were put onto us as a kid. And if this wasn't done right, or it wasn't done at all, you were lazy, you were half-assed, you were this, you were that. Like, it was a very difficult place, because he was angry and sometimes he treated us like soldiers. And that was a big issue, because like, he didn't have that figure growing up as well. So
See, now you're making me feel guilty. And I'm sitting here going, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I do to my kids. And that's why I wanted to talk to you about this, because it's like, it's the different perspective. But I do the same thing, and I have a theory, and I don't know if it's backed up by anything that you've learned about so far. But so for me, I get upset with the kids when they don't listen, when they are running their mouths. I tell them to do something, they don't do it. And I think every parent gets frustrated, but I think with those that have PTS and TBI, it's slightly, it's like your anxiety, your blood pressure immediately goes up, and it's a much bigger deal. But it's like, I think it's the moments of chaos that you cannot control.
Yes.
And it's,
so
I have to be, sorry,
no, you're fine.
I have to be in control, and you're not listening to me. You're not doing what I told you to do. I told you to clean empty the dishwasher. You've only done it 1,000 times. Why are you still messing it up?
Yeah, that was what I heard. We didn't have a dishwasher, so I had to wash dishes.
You were the dishwasher.
I was the dishwasher. So that it comes from, you rewired your entire life in the military. From when you get into basic, you change your whole life. You get patterns. If you don't clean the latrine right, because I'm going military terms here, if you don't clean the latrine right, push-ups, yelling, like you just didn't do something right, yelling. Throughout your entire career, that was normal. Like, you had a squad leader, and there is toxic leadership out there, and there's also positive leadership. But if you don't do something right, yelling, because they get yelled at from up top, then they take it out on their soldiers. That is a very common thing. And over time, especially in the older cultures of the Army, that was a common thing. But you can't break that pattern once it begins. That's something that you have to be like, okay, I'm going to cool down in this moment. I shouldn't be mad at my child. I think I'm more mad at the moment. You just walk away. Do breathing techniques. Kind of ground yourself before you address the situation. Like, hey, one of your chores is to unload the dishwasher. Is there, a lot of times you could say, oh, is there something going on? Like, what caught your attention? Like, what was something that we can try and fix and make this better? Like, what can we do to get your chore done, but also not get me frustrated?
Yeah. And for me, it's hard. because it's like,
You have young kids.
I'm sorry?
You have young kids.
Well, they range from 17, 15,
Okay.
6, 3, and 2. So I got the full spectrum.
That's a lot of kids.
Yeah. But it's, I think you're absolutely right, where it's that for 20 years it's been ingrained in me. And this was my other thought about what you were talking about with your dad. It's like when we find ourselves in those comfortable moments, like he walks into the house and he's the senior, superior individual in a rank and file structure, not saying like he is
Yeah.
superior than everybody else, but like you're at work and your superior yells at you because you did something wrong, you can't yell back. You can, but then there's going to be disciplinary actions.
Yes.
And so you come home and it's like, okay, now I'm home, I'm comfortable. I can take out all of the frustrations that I have on those that are weaker than me because they're not going to run their mouths to me. So now it's my outlet. And I've fallen victim to that on more than one occasion. And if my kids are listening to it, I'm sure they will bring it to my attention.
Yeah.
So.
And I think the biggest way is to break that pattern. Look into, now when you hear the term gentle parenting, a lot of people think, oh, the whole let them be misfits. No, gentle parenting has been like, hey, like for example, hey, put your coat on. They're like, no, I don't want to put my coat on. Okay, well, we are going out and it's cold. Can you please put your coat on? And it turns into a whole tantrum. Like, okay, buddy, I get you don't want to put your coat on, but can we put your coat on so we get into the car so we can go out and finish these tasks? And if that works, then that's fine. But you always have a positive behavioral method. So you have positive impacts, negative whatever. I just did a paper. Let me open that paper because I think there's a lot of information on that because I did a whole paper for English on that. It's called behavioral modification in children.
Unfortunately, I feel like it's the adults that need to modify their behavior because when we're the one, like my natural instinct is just to start yelling. And it's like, put your jacket on. No, I said put your jacket on. And it's the frustration. You're not listening. I'm telling you to do something. It's for your best interest. You're not listening to me. And so I'm just going to yell. And then that's not healthy for the kid. And it's not, again, it's not fair to them. Like they don't deserve to be yelled at. Well, I don't know. You don't listen to me. Maybe you do need to be yelled at.
A lot of times, especially with the patterns and what you guys learned in the military, what you said it perfectly was the person comes home, they're comfortable, they're the rank and file. They're not registering in their brain, that's family.
Right.
There's no rank and file, everybody's equal. I mean, there's obviously parent and kid, but like everybody has to have trust and respect. But a lot of times, think of it this way, your child is going to view that, your aggression and your anger or your emotion at that moment and be influenced by it.
Yes.
Children view parents and they look up to them, even though that's something that you don't want them to do, or they might not see it immediately, they'll do that. Like, I have to say this, but I'm not a perfect person either. When I get frustrated at something, oh, you better clear the room because I am mad.
Yeah.
I am upset. And it's not, okay, growth is not linear. It's not. There's days where you're going to have bad days and you're going to get frustrated. The biggest thing is recognizing that behavior, and you do not want to be the reason your child goes to therapy. You want to be the influence, the person who is able to show them how to distress a situation without immediately going to emotion. It's a lot of logic. You have to have a lot of reasoning, and it's harder for people who have damage to that part of the brain to have that control of the sensations, all that. But the biggest thing is recognizing that behavior, studying into behavior modification, not just for you, but for your kids as well, because you have little kids. So being able to show that example and then being like, have a sit down talk with your adult kids, because they're almost adults, be like, hey, what is better ways that we can communicate and talk about like our feelings? Like what is something that will get us frustrated? So that way I know that these won't upset me, like your triggers, like what Bradford said, that his son was very, very like empathetic to him about it, because they sat and had a conversation. It's important because a lot of times you're like, hey, you're yelling, but like if you sit down and say, hey buddy, I'm sorry, I just in my head I'm quick to aggression, I'm sorry that I got mad at you, here's ways we can combat this. You go about it in a way that's logical, but you got to get out of that emotional mindset first. So
Yeah, and I've done some of that where my two big kids will definitely be in therapy because I didn't start getting help until my littles were
yeah.
around. So I'm expecting those hard conversations in the future. But what I've started doing now is when I am reacting to something and excuse me, I fly off the handle,
Okay.
I get mad, I say things I probably shouldn't. I force myself to go back the next day and address it. Or once I've calmed down, and just be like, hey man, I'm sorry I did this. I shouldn't have said that. And I've even gone as far as I told my 15-year-old, I said, I love you and I want you to know I'm proud of you. And I told him just out of the blue. And he was like, okay. I said, I just want you to hear that from me now when I'm not mad, because I want you to know that I truly do love you. And then when I am mad at you and I'm like, but I do love you, I don't want you to think I'm just saying it just to remind myself. Like, I really do love you.
Yeah, you can retrain your brain. So I am looking at an article that I can send you. Changing habits, identifying cues. Something has to trigger a habit. For example, your kid not doing the chore. That triggered you into the moment that someone wasn't doing their right job in your last career, or at that moment from the patterns that you've talked about is whole 20 years. That's what you knew.
Right.
That's a trigger. That's a correlation. So once you recognize that, once you know those cues, you can disrupt it. You can throw bad times off track. And once you disrupt that behavior, you can then reward yourself. This is commonly used for behavior modification in children, because you're doing a positive reinforcement and a negative reinforcement. Replace. So research shows that replacing a bad behavior with a good one is more effective than stopping the behavior alone. The new behavior interferes with the old habit, just like over a good memory goes over a bad memory, like you were saying. Put this over that. Keep it simple. It's usually hard to change a habit because the behavior has become easy and automatic. The opposite is true too. New behaviors can be hard because your brain's basal ganglia, the autopilot part, hasn't taken over this behavior yet. Simplifying new behaviors helps you integrate them into your autopilot routines. This way you can think, okay, I can retrain my brain, think of like study habits and stuff like that. Think long-term. Habits often form because they satisfy short-term impulses. Short-term impulse in this situation is your aggression.
Yeah.
Extreme aggression. The way chewing at your nails might immediately calm your nerves. It's a good example, but short-term desires often have long-term consequences, like nasty chewed up fingers.
Yeah.
Focusing long-term while trying to change some habits will help you remember why you're investing in the effort, just like you investing in a therapy and thinking of the long-term. I was looking to the alpha STEM stuff. I tried finding a bunch of case studies on it, but it's really hard to find it through what sites I use, because I try and use like educational academic sites that have articles on that. But I was looking into it, and it's cool that they do brainwave activity. That's also a good way to combat it. Persist. Research has shown that if you've done before is a strong research has shown that what you've done before is a strong indicator of what you'll do next. This means established habits are hard to break. But the good news is, if you keep at it, your new behaviors will turn into habits too. Persistence is key. A lot of time, you're training for a sport, persistence is key. That's the best way I can explain it. Put yourself, study it, know what you're doing, like you're studying your triggers, parking lots are triggers. And you talked about, you didn't think that was a trigger. You didn't realize that was a cue, but your wife, an outside perspective, gave that ability to see that, and now you're trying to get through it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the same way with behavior modification and trying to be a better person, like changing your behavior so that your kids, you can think long term.
Yeah, and like even in our conversation here where you and I are talking about, our response to kids and stuff, And you brought up that that's a trigger for me because your kid's doing something, so it takes you back to a time in your military career where somebody didn't do something. And immediately my mind went to when I was with the 82nd Airborne and we were out on the range and somebody had a loaded gun and they flagged a couple of guys. And by that, I mean, for the people that are listening and don't understand it, it's when you turn a loaded weapon towards people. It's called flagging. It's always supposed to be, up or down away from other people. And the NCOIC that was in charge was like, hey, smoke him and teach him a lesson. And the smoking him, for those again, it's make him do push-ups or sit-ups or flutter kicks or jumping jacks or whatever I feel like doing as a punishment. But I just remember like yelling at him, telling him he was going to get somebody killed if he wasn't paying attention to what he was doing, making him do push-ups. And it was my goal to like teach him a lesson. And it's like, I'm going to do this until like he can't do any more push-ups. And then I'm gonna make him do sit-ups till he can't do any more sit-ups. And so it's like, that's the mentality. It's like, you did something wrong. You now have to be punished. But yeah, so I bring that up just because it's like, I'd never put those two things together. And I'm not saying that's the instance that creates that trigger, but it's the constant.
It shows.
Yeah.
I know that you can also have your wife be like, just like she says, when you walk away, when you have an anxiety attack or PTSD attack, she accounts for that angry emotion with you towards kids.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you need to cool down. You're thinking, you're having short impulses into behavior. Now she can say it a different way because that could be a trigger for you while you're angry.
Well,
like, hey, walk away, cool down.
No, that's exactly what she does because she sees it and she just goes, all right, you're done, go away. And I'm just
now,
I'm okay.
Something that she should work on too is addressing it a different way. That is also a big thing. Relationships as PTSD, like what Bradford was talking about, just the anger. Like she just wants you to listen, but you're like, I don't want to listen.
I know. We had a thing today where my 2-year-old was doing something and started yelling and screaming. I just got up and walked away, and she goes, I don't understand why that bothers you. And I told her, it's like, I don't need you to understand why it bothers me. I just need you to understand that it bothers me.
So best way I can explain it to her, and I know that she's not in the room, when you have damage to that.
Oh, did you mute? I lost.
Hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay. For some reason, someone called me, so it muted me. Anyway, when you have damage to that part of your brain, especially with PTSD, your sensation is heightened. Anything can trigger you. Sudden loud noises, that is a big trigger. You can see that in autistic people. You can see that in ADHD, ADD. Anytime that those loud sensations happen, it's like your brain's like, oh God, what do I do? I just walk away from the situation. That's kind of a way to explain it to her is scientifically. Show her parts of the brain that are damaged and be like, hey, this is why. No, she may not completely understand, and I 100% that because my boyfriend doesn't 100% understand why I get so quick to aggression, because I am an emotional person. And I have to be like, okay, I need to go to my logical brain. How can I fix this logically?
Yeah.
So.
I want to ask about your dad again.
Okay. Sure.
Has your dad gotten help? Has he gotten better?
No, because he doesn't believe in PTSD. That is a big thing that has bothered me because he hasn't. He has been on, I think, 4 deployments. He saw his own friend have his own leg blew up. That's PTSD. He watches war movies and I can see how upset he gets. It's just like he has it, he doesn't want to accept it. Now, from last time I talked to him, it seemed like he knew his behaviors were wrong and that his anger was wrong because he was doing some sort of schoolwork and was reading a book on it. But as far as I knew, he was just wanting to work on it himself. But I don't think he's going to work because his self help is alcohol, and that is a big issue in my family is alcoholism. So it's a little hard to get away from that.
Gotcha. Well, I wish and hope that he gets help.
Me
And
too.
because if he does listen to this podcast, which I hope he does, I can speak from experience that once I got help, it changed my life. Like it was dropping a rucksack, and I didn't have to carry the weight anymore. Like I had other people there that were willing to help me figure things out, and it changed relationships in my family, made me a better person. So I hope that he gets help.
Yeah, me too. And the best analogy, you put it that way, is like dropping a rucksack. It's a great analogy.
Yeah, it's like you get done with the ruck, you just pop the straps, it falls off, and it's like a weight has been lifted off your shoulders.
Now you're still going to have those scars, just like you have them scars on the bottom of your feet when you ruck for 10 miles.
Yeah, but it's okay. You learn to deal with them.
Yeah. You'll look at those scars and be like, I made it.
That's right.
Went through that. I did it.
Yep. You're still able to walk with the scars. Doesn't slow you down anymore.
No.
But you know that they're there.
Oh, yeah. It gives you a reminder to set long-term goals.
Exactly. Well, Talison, I want to thank you for coming on and your honesty and openness with everything. And I wish you nothing but the best in your studies. And hurry up and join the military and fix people.
Yeah. OCSing, I got to get there. But I'm excited. This was great. And I think you're doing a good thing. And I think that you are going to change a lot of lives. You're gonna allow the ability to vent, just like when Bradford was talking about it. Like you felt like you had nobody, and then finally learning that and having somebody who understands an analogy can put it together. It's great.
Yeah.
I hope to be on here again sometime soon and just have powwow and talk about things like various treatments that I've learned and stuff like that as well. So I'm excited, and I thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
No problem.
All right. We'll talk to everybody later.
Bye.